Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber,
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
and we have a special guest with us today, Farzad Mesbahi. Are you there, Farzad?
Yes, sir, I am.
There we go. And so this is Thursday morning. It is our second podcast every week, and Farzad has joined us. Farzad is one of the up-and-coming influencers on the various social media sites. EV background, EV passionate. And Farzad, at this point, why don't we just have you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you like my sunglasses. They're $10. My wife
Awesome.
got them for me.
They are
because I
awesome.
Thank you. I lost my $250 pair of Oakleys at the beach because I was I'm like, hey, let me go into the ocean and just ride the waves a little bit. And of course, I'm an idiot, so I lost them. So now I'm relegated to $10 sunglasses.
Oh.
I think they fit me better.
I have done that.
But no, thank you so much for having me. I started this YouTube thing about a year and a half ago, and honestly started as a hobby. I had worked at Tesla for a little over 4 years. Before that, I had been a Tesla investor for over 10 years. I was a director of business intelligence at a distribution company for about 7 years. And so it's one of those things where for about 10 years, I had a small business. My wife and I had an escape room in Pennsylvania. My wife and I basically just worked extremely hard for 10 years. And then after that 10 years, we had a lot of things went our way. We got very, very lucky when it came to our financial stability. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to just kind of carve my own path and see where it goes. And I put out a couple of YouTube videos for fun. And then before I know it, I'm basically doing them every day because I enjoy it so much. And it's awesome. I don't know. It's like it's a very weird sort of thing that I sort of stumbled into. And I just feel very fortunate to do what I do. And I get to hang out with cool people like you wearing sunglasses during a podcast. So how can my life get any better than this, y'all? Come on now.
So you were with Tesla for a short while, and what was that like? Tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I was there from 2017 through 2021, about 4 years and like 4 months or something like that. And it was pretty amazing. I mean, I had followed the company for a long time before I joined it in 2017. I first invested in 2012, and I was just very captivated by the mission of the company, the cars that it built, sort of the technology that it had, the leader and Elon Musk. So a lot of things sort of were just very attractive to me, and it kind of became an obsession. It was like one of those things, I can't devour enough information about this company, And then after, what was it? I guess 4 or 5 years after I started investing in the company and really researching it, I had the opportunity to join it out of the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania warehouse that they just opened up. So I worked in the parts distribution part of the company, the organization, so on the supply chain side. And at that point, I was working at a different distribution company. It's called Phillips Pepper and Supplies. Shout out to Blaine, Cheryl, Jessica, everybody there, Brian and Declan, and all those other people that I work with for as long as I did. So I learned so much from that leadership group, and it gave me the ability to sort of go into the Tesla world and have an impact there. And it was the most challenging and rewarding, 4 or some odd years of my life. It was so unique. Met a lot of insanely great people, insanely talented people. I constantly felt like one of the dumbest people in the world because I'm surrounded by so many freaking smart people. And it taught me a lot about, no challenge is too great to overcome. Never underestimate just how bad something can go.
Right.
Just a lot of great life lessons that I was able to take from that experience. And I felt extremely proud working there, and I can say with a lot of pride that I was a former Tesla employee, and I view that company very highly and in a very positive light. But at the same time, I'm also really enjoying seeing how the rest of the auto market is evolving around this sort of EV transition, and there's just so much going on now in the world in relation to that. So it's just as an outsider now, fascinating to see the whole thing evolve, and just forever grateful for that experience.
We have an Instagram comment from Riza Rokafruz, and he says, "Hi, Farzad. YouTube, Eugen Faber waves." And then YouTube My Melt says, "I saw his first video on YouTube. Lots of info and live streaming on YouTube. Good stuff." So you're getting some praise already, Farzad. Thank you for joining us.
I'm humbled.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, Pete, that isn't a wave. That is Eugen on YouTube giving us the "Live Long and Prosper" emoji from
Yeah,
that right
Star
there.
Trek. Yeah, okay. Very
one
cool.
Of these, right?
It's
Let me see if
one
I
of
can
these
do it.
things.
Hold
One
on.
of these
It's
things.
hard to do.
one of those.
There we go.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
my
there you go.
hands are
That's
cramping
pretty
up.
close.
I guarantee everybody in the audience is doing the same thing just now. You know, trying to
That's right.
position that.
There, I got it.
There you
Look at
go.
that.
You got
Perfect.
it. You got it.
Just like Spock. You got it. Yep. So, born in Cordoba, Spain, is that right?
That's right.
Tell us about that. It sounds
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's born and raised in Spain. So my parents, I'm 100% Iranian Persian. So my parents were born in Iran, and there was a revolution in 1979, which at that time they left the country to try and pursue better educational opportunities. You know, that just the country went through a lot of turmoil, still is. And they moved to Spain, and they had me and my brother. So I was born in '87, and they just happened to live in Cordoba, Spain. And I was there for about 12 years. I haven't been back since. I would love to go back and visit with my wife. You know, and it's one of those things too. Like my Spanish has been eroding slowly every single year because I don't practice it nearly as much as I should. But
Right.
you know, I got to experience that country as a kid. I'd love to experience it as an adult. But all I really remember from that, you know, from living there is, you know, having a lot of friends in school, and playing in the main plaza in Cordoba in the summer when it's like literally 100 and some odd degrees out, but it's super dry and you're always sweating. But I don't know, people seem to really enjoy napping all the time with their siestas, and apparently they have a really good reputation for having a good time down there. So, you know, I was a kid, but I'd love to go back as an adult and get to experience that country again. But it's one of those things where, you know, if I'm traveling to a Spanish speaking country, I have this sort of a super weapon, because, you know, when you look at me, you're like, okay, this guy doesn't really know how to speak Spanish because I look Middle Eastern, right? From that part of the world. And then all of a sudden I pull out this Spanish, and everyone was like, oh my God, what happened? So it's one of those cool things, you know, that I have in my back pocket, and it comes in handy a lot of times. But it was great. I'd love to go back and visit for sure. I definitely miss experiencing that country for sure.
Well, you did a good job losing your accent. I came here when I was 8 years old from Germany. And, you know, I
nice.
found that you had to get rid of the accent because kids would make fun of you in school.
Oh, sure.
So that was a strong motivator. But at age 12, typically people have some residual. Occasionally I hear something in your speech patterns, but it's almost completely gone. And, you know, the other thing I wanted to have you share with the audience is a lot of them have seen your podcasts, and they're probably intrigued by what's hanging on the wall behind you. And you started to tell us a bit. Can you tell us a bit more about this other passion that you have?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been playing guitar really since we moved to the States. You know, I didn't know how to speak English at all. So, you know,
Me
we
too.
moved
Yeah.
to the country, and I had to learn it as I went. And one of the things I picked up to try and fill up my time, because I was kind of a loner and kind of at home, didn't really have any friends, and I had to rebuild that entire social circle again. I became obsessed with a band called Metallica. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
yeah.
pretty
No,
big
I'm too
metal
old.
band.
way past my time. No, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's that band sort of inspired me to pick up a guitar and start playing it. So I think I was around age 14 or 15. I picked up the guitar, and I just became, it's one of those things where I just couldn't put it down. And I learned Metallica's entire discography, you know, learned every song. And I to this day I still play it, not as much as I should, honestly. It's one of those things where if you don't play all the time, you don't get better. So I've been stuck at this level of playing for the last, I would say I'm probably as good as I've ever been, but I haven't gotten any better. And sort of my peak was, maybe like 10 years ago. So one of the things I keep telling myself is I'm going to pick it back up truly, and maybe get some lessons and kind of go to the next level that I think I can achieve. You know, I would say I'm a pretty good rhythm guitarist, especially when it comes to metal music. I can basically play anything, but when it comes to lead guitar, that's one of my biggest weak points. And I'm not as well-rounded as I should be. Like, you know, I can play blues, but not really that well. I can't play jazz really. And, the other stuff is kind of like, it's not as interesting to me, but I do enjoy playing, certain songs or certain types of music. But for me, sort of metal is the one that really, I don't know. It just, for me, it speaks closely to my interest. And one of the other things too that I do musically is I used to play clarinet in marching band back in high school, and I actually played it semi-professionally when I graduated college. I played in pit orchestras locally, and I actually got paid as a clarinet player,
that's
which is
pretty
like
cool.
like I think back to yeah, I'm like, whoa, that's freaking wild. So music has been a big part of my life, and I mean it's almost meditative in a way for me. It helps me, if I'm having sort of a stressful day, I can just pick up the guitar and hammer out riffs and play songs for like half an hour to an hour, and I just feel so much better. So
Mhm.
it's part of me, and I should be playing it more because it makes me feel good 100% of the time when I do it. So it's a little bit about guitar.
Now, and you said that guitar in the middle, is in a drop D. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. It's detuned. Yeah, so it's a little bit lower tuned than this one. This one's E standard. This one's a full step down, and basically it makes the guitar perfect to play for those heavier tunes, those metal songs that really get down there are chunky and heavy. That's what I use that guitar for. And then the one on the right it's E standard, which is what a lot of songs are tuned to. Now the newer metal scene has a lot of sort of detuned songs as well, like a lot of kind of lower the pitch of
Yeah.
the song because it just makes it sound heavier. But I just, to my ears, the E standard just sounds better because I don't know. I just like the sound of those songs better. And it's another thing too, is like once you go you detune your guitar, you make it a lower tune. If you don't have strings that kind of try to make the feel of the string the same as an E standard, then you'll have a little bit sloppier string. And that's what I haven't done. I haven't invested in a thicker gauge string on my detuned
Right.
guitar to make the feel of the guitar a little bit more similar than the E standard, and that's probably why I don't play it as much as I should, really, because it just I'm used to the feel of the string when it's E standard with the strings that I use, which are super slinkies. I forget the gauge, but yeah. So I should probably do that. I should probably invest in thicker gauge strings for my detuned guitar so that so it feels the same. Because then I'm like, man, I'm missing notes I shouldn't be missing, and then I get frustrated and I put it back and I pick up the E standard. Yeah.
All right, that's a little bit about your background. How did you get interested in EVs? How, what was the core of that passion?
It all started with really the Tesla story. So when I started investing in stocks back in 2012, so I had my first real job when I graduated college in 2010. So it was at the end of exiting the Great Recession that we had. Just graduated college. The economy was a poop show. I don't know if I can curse here, so I'll use softer language. It was not great. And so I basically was trying to look for something that that I could make a living on. My parents didn't have a lot didn't have a lot in the country, and they just moved to the country. What was it? So it was 2009. So then would have moved to the country 10 years ago. But we don't come from a lot, so it was one of those things where it was quite important for me to find something as soon as possible. And I was very fortunate to have the position that I had at Philips. It just happened to be our neighbor. She worked there, and she knew I was looking for work, and they brought me in for a temp position. And I said, "Hell yeah, I'll take anything." Pretty sure it was $12 an hour or something was getting paid out of college. And so as I sort of made an impact at that company and became full time and started making more money, it became clear to me that I need to do something to really increase my wealth and become financially independent and do the things that I want to do. And I stumbled onto the stock stuff because it seemed like one of the better ways to grow wealth if you're well researched. And that's how I discovered Tesla. And the Tesla story from an investing perspective was very strange because a lot of the mainstream outlets were basically extremely dismissive, but it had this very powerful retail investing community that was super sold on what the company and the leader in Elon Musk were doing. And I'm like, wow, I don't see this anywhere else. Apple doesn't have this. A bunch of the other companies I was following didn't have that. So that became immediately interesting to me. And then when I started digging deep into the story, it really started becoming, I really resonated with the fact that over time, electric vehicles are going to be the mode of transport because they'd have so many natural benefits versus a gas car. A lot less moving parts. You don't have to go to a gas station to fill up. Theoretically, you have better maintenance over time as the technology gets better. It really allows you to leverage the platform to do things you can't do with a gas car. Like you can't leave a gas car running in your garage for 4 hours. You'll die,
Right.
from carbon
Right.
monoxide poisoning.
Right.
But with an EV, you can, right? So like that opens up a host of different possibilities as a digital product. Self-driving technology is a lot easier with an EV because it's instant, instant torque, instant acceleration. It's just a safer product. So it became it just became very obvious to me, and I'm like, okay, wow, this is totally where we're going. And I'm looking around, and it seemed like back in 2012, 2013, I mean, I don't think anyone even knew the company existed, at that time.
Yeah, right.
And then once it had that initial run up and the company became a little bit more well known, I was kind of sold on, okay, yeah, so I'm on the right train here from an investing perspective. But then the product and the story just was so captivating to me as an overall shift in where the auto industry is going, that I just couldn't stop obsessing over it. So, and it was very hard for me to find people in my circles that were interested in the story. And so, I would be on forums and Twitter and wherever else trying to, Reddit, anywhere to try to talk to people about this because no one around me knew it. And then over time, I had the opportunity to work at the company, and I got to see it firsthand, just how special of a thing it is, just the whole transition to EVs. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is one of those things where it'll be transformational before the history books. And I think we're starting to slowly see that happen as we get into this decade and into the next decade. And yeah, it's just been very fun to watch that whole story arc. And I'm just very interested to see how it develops over time.
So did you keep your Tesla stock from 2012?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You did. Okay. See, he was one of the smart ones. I was the day trader, right? I thought I was going to make a lot more money going in and out of it because it's volatile. That was a colossal mistake. I've been in it now for over 2 years, and that's a smart way to do it. By the way, this morning it's 230 plus, 232, I think, before we came down here to the studio.
So it's still going up, and
It's still going up.
I saw that Jim Cramer, the financial guru, is talking about Tesla and has really good things to say about it. Was talking about how it's poised to really take off and go places over the next few months. Hope he's right.
Yeah, we get asked those questions all the time, Farzad. What do we think about Tesla? And I say, well, look at the amount of production space, that is under construction right now, and look at the constant exponential demand for the product. It's a proven formula. I don't know where anything could go veer off course.
Well, I think it was from one of your videos from just a few days ago, Farzad. I was watching it, and one of your guests saying, this is a company that is probably going to have something around $60 billion in free cash flow over the next few years. Where are they going to spend their money?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying. I mean, I think the biggest data point that I look to that says this story has not just legs, but it could be a dominating story for the next 10 years, is that the company is going to sell somewhere between 1.8 million to 2 million cars in 2023, with the best-selling car globally in the Model Y, with no advertising in the United States and little advertising in Europe and China, with a giant competitive electric vehicle market out there as a startup. And that seems very weird, when you think about, achieving those types of goals versus other companies. A 2 million car production rate for an EV maker, EV only maker, no advertising, and with average selling prices of $45,000 to $50,000, with a technology that's still new to a lot of people, and already be, call it 20 to 25% of the size of a Toyota that sells somewhere between 9 to 10 million cars per year. That's completely and absolutely bananas. And like you guys said, Mexico Gigafactory is going up, And then there's rumors around an India gigafactory. There's rumors today for Valencia, Spain
Yeah.
gigafactory.
Yep.
Right. So it's just getting started. And then we're not even talking about the self-driving technology. We're not talking about the energy stuff that they're working on with solar panels and batteries. We're not talking about the humanoid robot, which seems like insane technology, but probably closer than a lot of people think. Yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot going on with the story, and now with the whole AI thing taking off, everything is AI now. I don't know if you guys have been noticing this trend, but freaking everything is, this bottle is AI now. It's like everything is AI. So I think with the Tesla story, I think it will benefit from that, but I do think they're uniquely positioned to actually be a legitimate AI company. I would already consider them an AI company because of their self-driving technology, which I get to experience every single day. So yeah, it's fascinating.
I think most people misunderstand Tesla. It's not a car company. It's a tech company. It always has been. And you're right. I think AI dovetails nicely into that direction they've taken.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and even to the point that people are always telling us that we live in the Matrix because of our sunglasses.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there you go. See, we are AI. Look at that.
You guys can't see me, Farzad. I'm a producer in the background. I'm Jesse. I was the one that you were emailing. But
what's up, Jesse?
There are people also that think that the robot and the AI portion will actually be the most valuable part of Tesla within the next few years, by a factor of 10 or more.
Interesting. Yeah. Speaking of AI, the image behind you, and we usually announce that, and we haven't in this session, but that is an AI-generated image, and the prompt basically said, give me a nice tropical setting and a new studio, and this is what it typically renders. So I'm curious about something else, Farzad. There are a number of us that are in this space, in the EV space, that are emerging as influencers from the various social media platforms. Is there anybody that inspires you? I mean, besides us, of course.
Of course. Now, I was going to say you guys for sure. You're number one. Come on.
There we go. Thank you.
I think for me, it's the ecosystem around the EV story is so fascinating because it really, I think it started very much as a grassroots sort of thing because it was misunderstood and not a lot of information was out there. And at times, I think it was not covered properly by mainstream sources, and so you had this thing blossom from the ground up on Twitter, on forums, and especially on YouTube lately. The one person that really inspired me to really do this, I think, in a way, it's people like Dave Lee, people like Rob Maurer. These are guys that Stephen Mark Ryan is another one. There's just so many. There's so many folks on Twitter as well, folks on Tesla Motors Club forums that were just such important voices, especially during times where everyone seemed to be against not just the company, Tesla, the company, but the story, the overarching story of electric vehicles. And those individuals, independent, I would call them independent journalists in a way, really started becoming a powerful force to be reckoned with because I think they were speaking truth. They were saying what was actually happening. And I think that's proven by the fact that a lot of what they were saying has become true and is continuing on that trajectory. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think really anyone who's out there covering a story independently, and they're trying their best to be honest, and they're trying their best to be unbiased, and they're open to feedback, and they're open to criticism, and they're just trying their absolute best is an inspiration to me, because that's what I try to do. I know I have my biases. I know I have weaknesses, and maybe I might have blinders on when I'm thinking about certain things. But doing what I do is an exercise for me, really, to try and become more confident in speaking my mind and bringing information forward, and also opening up myself to receiving information that people are giving me that I might like to hear, but more importantly, that I might not like to hear. Right. So it's almost a thesis testing mechanism in a way, doing what I do. And, it just so happens that I don't know if I have some natural ability that kind of works well in this space, which has helped me to grow my channel a little bit. But, I think as long as people are vulnerable and honest and are trying their best to do something good, I think things will work out, and I see many people in the space doing that, and that's, yeah, like I said, it's inspiration for me every single day to try to do my best.
Mm-hmm. What is so great about the space is that, you know, it used to be that if you were an artist, you typically starved, the starving artist syndrome, right? In this space, it's kind of cool in that if you're passionate about something like this and you build up a channel, you know, like we're talking about, you can actually monetize and you can make a living doing this. There are people in the space that have dedicated their lives to this. There are a couple of ladies in Texas, for example, that hover around the, you know, Giga, all of the rockets that they're sending up. And so that's, I think, what makes this fun. We've got a customer, for example, a young kid, who bought a Tesla Roadster with the proceeds from this type of activity. Cash, mind you. And, and he was 18 years old.
A Plaid, no less.
Yeah.
To like 150,000 custom Plaid. You know, we should probably give some credit to some of the people that are starting to show up here asking questions. We've got James McCarthy, who came in on YouTube, and he loves your sunglasses, Farzad, and he's getting a kick out of that.
$10, CVS.
Yes. You know, I've got the same story. Beach, San Diego. I had my two boys at the time. One was 3, one was 4. I wanted to take them out in the water, and I had like $250 Oakleys. And a wave starts coming toward us. I'm going, I'm not going to be able to back up quickly enough. So my choice is, do I drop my 2 kids, save my glasses, or let the glasses go? And guess what? The boys are still around.
The boys are still alive. So
tough decision. Yeah, completely understand. Yeah.
George from Rich Rebuilds channel. That's his name on YouTube. He sent us some Bitcoins. And George, we want to thank you. We did receive them. Mark?
That's right.
Yeah. We can't see those because you guys are cut off for the screen here. Show them one more time.
Okay, there we go.
We have a couple of Bitcoin here. George had heard about you know, the conversation that you, Pete, and Elon had. Now, remember, this was the Elon who had somehow managed to lose 77 million followers and still had 23 left.
On Twitter, yeah. And
on Twitter.
How nice. Elon actually is, you know, becoming a friend on Twitter. And so I went with it. And next thing you know, Elon's trying to buy $20,000 from me or borrow $20,000.
Yeah, borrow $20,000 in Bitcoin, of course.
Yeah. And I said, well, I'm not going to give you $20,000 until you repay me for the amount that I put into Twitter to help you buy it, which was about 50%.
Yeah.
Well, it never occurred to him. I'm talking about $22 billion. He said, well, you know, I'll pay you back that Friday if you give me the $20,000 now.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Of course.
Kind of a good.
You guys are holding like 50 grand in your hands right now.
Well, you know,
it's like 20. My goodness.
That was my first reaction because I bought a Krugerrand about 30 years ago, and it actually did look like this, and it was actually valuable. It was solid gold.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But these things apparently are vapor, and you know. But somebody somewhere thinks that they're worth $32,000 a piece, right?
Well, yeah, you know, somebody. I'm sure somebody does, and I'll bet you if you sent one of these to that Elon Musk gentleman, he would be happy.
He would be satisfied with
that.
So,
George, thank you for that. We were really pleased to get your Bitcoin.
But he also gave us the stock price.
Oh, yeah. 231.61, George is saying right now. And we've got an Instagram comment from Gas or Electric. He says, watching from China, I'm enjoying the conversation. Well, welcome. And
thank you. I know that Instagram isn't able to see you, Farzad. We have a little bit of a different platform. They don't get to see the background and they don't get to see you, but they are able to hear everything.
Yeah.
Not seeing me is probably a good thing.
Where do we go from here, guys?
Well, so I can pull up the AI image if you want to do that.
Sure, let's do that.
And ask Farzad how he made this.
We are curious. You have an AI rendering of yourself, and we've been trying to cartoonize, or however you want to term it, rasterize some of the images that we have here. So we're curious what software you use to do this. It's pretty cool. It's the one that's in the background there.
Yeah, it's Lensa AI. It's an app on my phone. I have an iPhone, and I think you can get it on Android too. And you I think when the first sort of this craze started coming out, you know, where everybody was able to make their face AI. You upload 10 pictures of your face, which I'm sure ends up in a server somewhere, and now that that company or firm has my information for my face, and I don't know how to feel about that, but it is what it is at this point. And they basically make 100 AI variations of what you look like, and this was one of them. And I'm like, huh, this actually looks pretty accurate, and I makes me look 1,000 times better. So I'm going to use that as my profile picture, and that's what I did, and it ended up on my Twitter. Yeah.
So Lenseye, we use Midjourney here, and of course ChatGPT 5 now, I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, is it up to 5 already?
Yeah.
Wow, that was.
Oh no, I'm sorry, 4. It's
or
the it's a Midjourney that's up to 5.1.
Midjourney is up to 5. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, because I was on ChatGPT just earlier this week, and it gives good advice, I tell you.
So Farzad, what's your feeling about AI and how it will dovetail into this EV space? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think we're joking around a little bit, how this bottle is AI and we're all AI because everything's AI now. But I think, if I think back to what happened in the 1999, 2000 era with the dot-com bubble and all that stuff, you had every e-commerce, every website was getting ridiculous valuations and ridiculous hype around how, this is going to be the greatest company ever. Pets.com, I think, was one of the very infamous ones. Or not Pets. Was it Pets.com?
Yeah,
I think
it was Pets.com.
Yeah. Just a lot of craziness. And what ended up happening is, of course, most of it was hype, and a lot of them just kind of disappeared. But you had giant winners that emerged from that period. You had your Amazons, you had your Googles, and others that survived that crazy time, and they became much stronger. And now, your Facebooks, I think Facebook would have been later than that actually, but now there are these behemoths that are basically digital. They're just digital companies. If you look at the top 10 most valuable companies in the world, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and others are, strictly e-com, like what, internet-based companies that people thought was a hype at the end of 2000, but actually became extremely valuable. So that's how I view AI. I think AI definitely 100% has legitimate merits to it. I mean, it is transformational in so many different ways, but it isn't going to be this thing where every company is going to be able to be an AI company now. It's going to be much more, you'll have a few players that will win a lot, and most people will just have to leverage those solutions. And so how I think about the Tesla story or the full self-driving story, I think that's where the AI stuff comes to fruition, where it's going to be, AI is going to be absolutely crucial in solving the self-driving problem. And if I talk about my car, so I have a Tesla Model Y. I have had full self-driving on it since really 2020 time, 2020. And I had one of the early builds where full self-driving was sort of reserved for employees, and then it started becoming more and more widespread, and people outside of the company were able to use full self-driving. So I've seen it transform from this very primitive, very not helpful, stress-inducing, thing, to something that I use every single time I'm in the car, to the point now where, my wife used to constantly tell me, turn this off because it's driving me nuts and I feel unsafe, to she prefers the car having full self-driving on because it will react more safely to situations than I would. And so this is quite profound and crazy, and I use my wife as the wife test, as to gauge if this full self-driving thing is being solved. And it looks like it is going to be solved probably this year, if I were to guess. Probably this year, in the case of Tesla. In most use cases, you're like 99.999% of driving, especially in not insanely bad weather. Let's and in places where the infrastructure, so like say like the US has pretty good infrastructure versus other parts of the world, where you actually have roads and traffic lights and stop signs and all that good stuff. So I think that will get done this year. And once it is done, it's going to be so transformational to the fabric of transportation. You think about now, you'll have basically transportation units that don't require a driver. and the inside of this transportation unit can be rearranged to fit any sort of use case, like maybe, hey, I'm somebody who wants to go from point A to point B and get my job, my work done in the car, as an example. Then you can have the inside of the car be customized for that solution. I'm somebody who wants to go travel somewhere in style and pop some champagne and be in a hot tub. I don't freaking know, like stuff that's crazy, right? Yeah. And so that's where we're going, I believe. And that's where AI is going to be transformational. And I'm very curious to see how it pans out. How do you guys think about it? I'm curious to get your take on this.
We use it all the time. All our thumbnails these days, the background pictures. The other day, for example, I needed to answer a tough question, right? Will we release some of our intellectual property? And I was trying to couch this in a gentle, kind way, and I just wasn't doing a very good job. So I ran it through ChatGPT, and it came up with something that was flawless, and I used it. So what I'm curious about is what impact this will have on industry. What jobs it's going to change, not necessarily replace, but what it's going to change. And we are optimists here. So we're not afraid of AI.
Right.
We are embracing it. For 40 years, we've been involved in high-tech ventures, and we're not afraid of technology. We realize that we have to adapt. We have to learn how to use it. And, so that's my take on it.
Well, the whole AI thing reminds me of my roommate clear back, I'm dating myself here, almost over 30 years ago in college. He had the IBM PS2 computer with 120 kilobytes of RAM and so on and so forth. And this guy managed to learn how to interlace the graphics on the screen so it looked like it was a much higher resolution than it really was. And he learned and he knew how to put together a basic AI program. He could get a little dot that would work its way through a maze. And the thing about the dot is he could never get it to the point where it would seek out an end goal. It would just get to a point where it was comfortable, and then it'd start going back and forth, because by going back and forth in one spot, it would never get hurt.
It sounds like Pong now.
Yeah, kind of like Pong now. AI has gone so far and so fast. I agree with you, Farzad. It's going to be transformational in the way that it changes our lives. We really don't know how that's going to happen yet, because we're just at the dawn of really a new AI age. I think this could be akin to the knowledge revolution that occurred from the 70s to the early 2000s, when things really became digital and computerized. I think AI is going to be that kind of a revolution. There are going to be winners. There are going to be losers. The people who are willing to be open to the change are going to end up being the winners in this.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think your commentary is awesome. I think, to me, that the end game for AI seems to be very much net positive for humanity. But I think the transition there, I can't help but think it's going to be extremely rocky because of how quickly things can get disrupted. I don't know if we've been in a time before where all of a sudden, so if you look at the ChatGPT example and you think about all the white collar workers, where, I'm very familiar with that industry, behind the computer doing stuff. You could sit down and have ChatGPT with a combination of other AIs basically replicate the work of a significant percentage of people sitting behind a desk today at a corporation. And, it doesn't seem like we're that far away from that just becoming better than your best human. And then all of a sudden you've replaced, in a sense, every one of those workers in that role, right? Yeah. And so that starts disrupting one narrow role, in my opinion. But then how will it scale across all the other roles, and how quickly will people adjust to that? My one fear is that AI's progression is going to be so fast, right? Like it's going to be one of these like crazy parabolic moves that happen so quickly that there will be a 5, 10, 20-year period where people are like, holy crap, I don't know what the hell just happened, And then there's going to be, in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of disruption. There's going to be maybe some civil unrest while governments and people figure out how to deal with this new reality that an AI can do things better than you can behind a computer. And then eventually, if the Tesla bot comes to fruition and human or robots come to fruition, then the same thing could happen with physical labor in a sense. And I do think over time people will adjust, but I just can't help but think that the transition is going to be super rocky. Do you guys agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I think the social impact is going to be profound.
I do too. And for two reasons I think of. First, when we've talked about this a little bit, AI has a 100% memory retention rate. As human beings, we don't even think about the fact that 90 to 95% of everything that we encounter and that we have around us during the course of a day does not get retained in our memory.
Right.
And AI, when it reads a book, it's committed to memory perfectly 100% of the time, every single time. So AI can go through and scan the entirety of human history. And once it has scanned that entirety of human history once, it knows 100% of everything about human history, and then can start to make predictions that we as humans would never have enough knowledge be able to retain individually to be able to make. The other thing I think is that AI, because of that, AI is amoral. It doesn't have a sense of right and wrong, of good and bad, of social constraints like we have in our social culture. And in our cultures across the world. That right there is going to be one of the most terrifying things to humans, and it's going to be one of the things I think that's going to cause a lot of unrest.
Yeah. I hear little glimpses that remind me what AI is, and I'm still formulating the entire, process. But one of the things I read just this morning actually was, Ernest Hemingway could have written another blockbuster, but in the time that it took him to do that, AI can write 1 million of them.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly right. And they would be,
you got it.
And every single one of them would probably be better than Ernest Hemingway's best work.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Looks like we got a few questions here. YouTube. George again, he says, Farzad, a question for you. Which stock do you like better, Rivian or Lucid?
Oh, Rivian. I think Lucid. Lucid is interesting because the car is pretty freaking dope. I mean, I think it's none of us can deny that it's a state of the art, beautiful, well engineered piece of machinery that's just extremely impressive. But the problem with the company is that it is extremely unprofitable, and it's playing in a space right now that's suffering quite a bit when it comes to volumes. I think where Lucid went wrong, in my opinion, and again, not financial advice, this is a random person's opinion on the internet. Lucid built a company and a manufacturing process that was designed to manufacture a lot more cars than what the market's going to demand from them, which is going to weigh down the costs for the company quite a bit into the long term. And what I see with that company, if I were to predict sort of Lucid's outcome, is that they'll probably either be taken private by the Saudis. So I believe the Saudis just raised another $3 billion for them, or close to $2.5 billion or something out of the total $3 billion. And I think 65% of the stock is owned by the Saudis. And so I expect Lucid's financial struggles to continue for the foreseeable future, at which point there's two outcomes. Either the Saudis take it private, they fire the current CEO and they put somebody else in there, and it becomes, I don't know, some sort of break-even thing, or maybe a pet project for that fund to figure out how to manage. Or it just goes bankrupt and it goes under, and the Saudis are like, we're done losing money with this damn thing. So unless something drastic happens, unless Lucid can sort of quintuple their sales, which I don't see happening. In Rivian's case, they have a lot more cash in the bank. They have runway for multiple years at least, and they have a ramping business with a successful product that I see more and more of on the roads that is much more compelling to a much bigger total addressable market. Whereas Lucid, I think, operates in a very niche sort of Ferrari, Lambo type market, in my opinion. I think Rivian is much more like a Mercedes, BMW type TAM, and they've right-sized the business for that TAM, in my opinion. TAM meaning total addressable market. Mm-hmm. So from that standpoint, I think Rivian is a much better investment than Lucid, not investment advice, but I personally wouldn't invest in either, because they still need to get to the point where they prove that they can do what they're doing, because they don't have, they're specifically a car business. Rivian is specifically a car business, and they're relying on third parties in some cases to build out some of their expertise, like the self-driving stuff, for example. So from that perspective, okay, does evaluation match what the business is bringing from a value perspective? That's not to say the company isn't great. Rivian is a freaking awesome company, but from a valuation perspective, to me, it doesn't make any sense. But I could be wrong. We'll see how it plays out over time. But that's how I think about those two.
Fascinating viewpoint. You know, what we've been saying all along, or what I've been saying is, will the Saudis really give up on their second act? The fact that, oil is done and EVs seem to be the future. But that's an interesting perspective that you provide.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what Lucid comes out with. They're teasing an SUV that's a little bit lower priced than their premium luxury sedan. Man, if they were able to get a compelling type of vehicle in an SUV form to Farzad, to address what you were talking about, their market is so small right now with that luxury car segment.
Yeah, the problem with that SUV, though, is that there's the legitimate risk, even with these $3 billion raised, that they'll run out of money before they can even launch the SUV. Yep. That's the problem with Lucid. So they have to make it to the SUV, and the Saudis have to be like, okay, we'll fund another X billion dollars to get the SUV going. And if the SUV is not profitable, it's curtains. It's over. It's like literally, they have to bet the house on this product, because if it doesn't work out, I just don't see them surviving long term.
And you definitely make the great point that Lucid just doesn't have the runway that Rivian has right now.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So the supercar manufacturers, we all knew that they were going to have to move into EVs. Lamborghini, McLaren, Ferrari. They're pretty much niche companies. They don't do extraordinarily high volume. And we've been carefully watching their trajectory into EVs. And I find it humorous that even GM is coming out with a hybrid. Lamborghini's coming out with a hybrid. I mean, this is so 90s, 2000 or so. What are your thoughts on these silly moves?
Well, that's interesting, because, if I think Ferrari, if I think, Lamborghini, if I think Pagani, if I think, Koenigsegg and all these guys, Porsche, even to an extent, less so, but kind of, I think of them as works of art. A Ferrari 458 Italia is a work of art to me. That's one of my favorite cars of all time. I just absolutely love the way that thing looks. And I don't want that thing to be electric. I want that thing to sound like a freaking orchestra driving down the road. Like, in that use case, I understand sort of why these companies might want to retain a lot of that, what comes along with a gas car, because it's the purest representation of what it means to own a piece of art that tries to show humans just how cool a gas car can be, right? Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. I kind of get why they're sort of taking their time and going into it, because, if I had $300,000 to blow in a 458, I would freaking buy one, or however much it costs right now, or their newest models. I know it's out of production, but I would definitely delve into that car from that sense. So, but I think over time, the one thing supercar makers have to be careful with is that in my opinion, and this is sort of outside of my realm, you guys know this way better than I do, but I'll give you my 2 cents, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is that they have to be careful not to fall too far behind from a performance perspective, because electric vehicles are just so much quicker and can be so much faster because of the dynamics of having an electric drivetrain, and God knows what the Tesla Roadster is going to do with their thrusters and all this stuff. So it just opens up so many different things you can do with a supercar. That if Ferrari goes from being one of the fastest cars on the road to being one of the slowest cars on the road, but it still looks great and it sounds great, I feel like the prestige behind that might not be as great, because people are like, yeah, but I feel like I'm about to die from acceleration in my electric cars, and that's cooler than sounding great down the road, So I'm curious to see how that balancing act transforms over time. How do you guys think about that?
Well, speaking about the sound, we have on our Roadster matchmaking site currently a 414E, which is a one-of Lotus car that was built right after the Roadster experience at Lotus, and some of the design engineers and the engineers involved in drivetrain were involved in this hybrid. long story short, they got a bunch of money from the UK government to make an electric car, and they chose a hybrid. This car actually has 3 different engine sounds. One of them is a sedate 6-cylinder sound.
Right.
The other is a 12-cylinder Lamborghini type, the music that you're talking about, the symphony of a highly tuned, mechanical ICE engine. And a third one is way futuristic. It's a pod racer type sound. You're right, and that's part of the struggle, I think, for these supercar manufacturers, is keeping the brand alive with what the expectations of the customers are. The first thing I wanted to ask Lamborghini, how many of your customers asked for a hybrid?
Right.
I can't imagine there would be any, And then, like you say, there's some stiff competition out there. Now, if you create a hybrid supercar, it's a nightmare of maintenance because you have both, ICE and you've got an EV drivetrain that you have to maintain. And then, like you pointed out, I'm not sure there are any performance gains, because if you kept it 100% EV and you put all of your, space constraints into building an EV drivetrain and packing it in that car, it would be infinitely faster than a hybrid. So we're not really sure, why companies like GM with the Corvette are going hybrid. I can understand why maybe the music that a Lamborghini or Ferrari would make, they want to keep that sound. But if they went the Lotus direction and developed a high-quality sound system that replicated that for those that wanted it, you've got a switch inside the cabin. You can turn it on or off.
Right. And I'm with you on the whole. It's the whole hybrid thing. I have to say, I respect Ferrari a little bit for saying, no, we're going to build ICE cars into the 2030s at least. Mm-hmm. It's that hybrid that just makes me shake my head because of what you just said. Hybrids, the main advantage to a hybrid is things like better gas mileage. Who's going to buy a $300,000 car just to say, well, I only have to fill it up every 250 miles instead of every 100 miles, or or something like that. Yeah. That you're never going to do that. And all the disadvantages for the more complex structure, the combination of electric versus gas-powered motors, that now you've got 2 powertrains that can fail, you've got 2 motors that can fail. Mm-hmm. Those are such significant disadvantages. I would much prefer to see Lamborghini and McLaren or Ferrari or Porsche, although Porsche is starting to do this. Just take the jump already. Keep your ICE vehicle line if you want to keep it. I think that's a great idea. There's going to be a niche market for decades for especially for the high end, as you say, Farzad, works of art, which I'm like you. If I could afford one, I would love one. And then go and build other lines that are just straight EV. Don't mess around with this hybrid stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. Just go all in on the EV, go all in on the ICE, and just make them the greatest representation of each technology. Because you won't get things with a supercar Ferrari ICE. You're going to get the sound and the experience, like the shifting gears and the brutality of what it is to have a gas engine. And then with the EV, just make this thing a freaking bullet. Just make it into something that just literally makes your eyes go into your brain when you're accelerating, and just unbridled performance and just there to kill you. It's basically the car's trying to kill you with its acceleration. It's like, why wouldn't you want that? That sounds amazing. Ferrari, come on, if you're watching this, come on, guys, come on, get it together. Let's go.
we agree. So what do you think of Elon and Twitter? Have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Farzad.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Jesse.
Yeah, no, I was just saying Farzad talks directly. They talk to each other quite a bit. I watch you guys talk on Twitter. It's actually, you guys have some great conversations. I saw what you just talked to him about with the whole Twitch thing, which I thought is incredible, because now, because of your statement, Elon is going to implement some stuff for streamers.
Oh, that's right. The monetization. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of those things where I think Elon is a super interesting cat, and he one of the really cool things he's done, and I saw this firsthand at Tesla too, is that I think he does try his best to keep a pulse with everybody as much as he can. as much, I sent them 3 or 4 different emails on 3 or 4 different occasions at Tesla that were just like, hey, I have an idea. And then he would reply 24 hours later. And I just had him copied because, on the handbook, it says, reach out to anybody, even Elon, if you have an idea that you think would help. And every single time he would reply, I'm like, okay, this is really strange. I feel like you're too busy for this, but great. I'm glad you did. And so I think his behavior on Twitter is very similar to that. I think if you think about his leadership style, he's always trying to lead from the front. SpaceX, Tesla, always at the factory, leading from the front, solving problems, getting his hands dirty. And the whole premise behind Twitter, at least how Elon Musk has communicated this, is that Twitter is meant to be a free speech platform that's meant to really allow all voices to come forward and to kind of kill some of the overreaching when it comes to censorship and stuff in some other platforms. That's like the idea behind the platform, is to truly make it as open as possible. And with Elon's leadership style of leading from the front, it's probably not hard to expect that he would do the same in Twitter and come forward and set the example of what it means to exercise your free speech. And it's very unusual, I think, for an individual in that position, a chief executive officer of multiple multi-billion-dollar companies, to come out and speak freely about his viewpoints on politics and other things. It's like super jarring. And it was quite volatile for a long period of time. As soon as he bought Twitter, it freaked out a lot of people. But when you view it from that context, I think it's a normalization of just allowing people to voice their opinion and disagreeing with them as aggressively as you want. But it's like, okay, but that's the whole point of America. Like, cool. Right. That's how this whole thing works, So, and I think in a way, it's a beautiful thing. It can be definitely disruptive, but I think it's important to uphold that value that, it's one of the main reasons why everybody, a lot of immigrants come to America. I mean, I'm a second generation immigrant. My parents came here from Spain, from Iran. And I know many people that came to America as well for a lot of the incredible values that it has as a country. And I think having somebody upholding those values is important, regardless of what your politics are. I think it's just really cool that there's a place where all of us can get together, talk about, whatever we feel passionate about, as crazy as it might be. And we have each other's backs in ensuring that we can do that, as much as we might disagree with each other. So I think it's cool. It's super respectable.
Cool. Question. We've got actually Instagram. Being Dave asks, what do you think of Hyundai and hydrogen concepts coming back around?
I'm not a huge fan of hydrogen. I mean, it seems inefficient. You have to go through a process to put it into a tank. It's an electrification process of sorts, where you have to process the hydrogen, you put it into a high pressure tank, and then you put that in the car. And then that car's performance, it seems like hydrogen is very poor when it comes to performance. It might be an efficient fuel source in a sense, but you just don't get really good performance out of the vehicle. And then there is barely any infrastructure whatsoever around really anywhere to fill up hydrogen cars. So, and then you think about, I feel like the crash safety regulations around a hydrogen car are probably so extreme, because if something happens to that tank, my understanding is that thing is a freaking bomb. It just basically blows up the car. So to me, it seems like an inefficient, outdated way of powering cars. Maybe it's useful in certain use cases. Like I know Sandy Monroe has talked about this, maybe in like long haul trucking, it might make sense to do hydrogen because of some of the benefits you get from that use case. But it just seems so much more obvious to me that electric vehicles, by and large, like let's say for 80 to 90% of use cases, is the correct way of going about it, because there's electricity everywhere. And with battery technology becoming better and better, and form factors getting smaller, and the supply chain ramping up, and the costs coming down, it seems like we're geared to have affordable electric vehicles for everybody. And if you can charge it everywhere, how is that not a win for everybody, right? How do you guys think about hydrogen? I'd love to hear your take.
Well, I'm a fan of the Discovery Channel show BattleBots, and I remember seeing from a couple of years ago, some of these, they're robots that get into an arena and fight to the death, basically. And there's one particular robot that went out there and it had a flamethrower on it. And the robot he was going against had a spinner on it, so it was designed to hit you and knock you across the arena and hopefully knock you out. The spinner happened to hit the fuel tank of the bot that was the other one, and it was one of the most spectacular explosions I think that I've ever seen. And I can imagine that being a car. A hydrogen car gets T-boned at an intersection, and the next thing you know, there's nothing left, not only of that of the car that was hit, but nothing of the car that hit it, and very little left of the 3 cars sitting around the intersection that were just waiting there and watching it happen.
Yeah,
because the
hydrogen, like a crater.
Yeah, you got a 3-foot crater in the ground, and I think there's a lot of inherent potential problem with hydrogen in that sense. Plus the fact that as the lightest gas known in the elemental chart, it has so many problems with leaks.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The atoms are smaller in hydrogen than anything else, and even the smallest crack or smallest compromise, hydrogen will leak out of when gasoline or water does not.
Yeah. For me, it's simplicity. I enjoy the ingenuity and the simplicity behind an electric vehicle drivetrain. And, what we do need to get a handle on is carrying a 1,200-pound battery pack around with you when you're going somewhere. But that's an improvement in technology, which we seem to be on an exponential growth path now. If you think about it, for over 150 years, battery technology did not change. It was lead acid, sulfuric acid.
Yep.
That's how we exchange ions. And the changes within the last 20 years have been remarkable in battery technology. But I would go back to simplicity. I'm not sure that we want to go back to a world of plumbing and pumps and motors and tanks and valves and, all of that.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Got another question? Question for you, Farzad. It's from YouTube. Alex, he's saying, when you left Tesla, was it a relief to walk away from the crazy workload?
Great question. I think about this often. I don't know if it was a relief. The workload was intense. I mean, there were 80-hour weeks, sometimes longer, especially the first couple of years I was there when we were ramping up our facility and really the broader service supply chain network. It was freaking brutal, man. But with that type of work, once you overcome what feels like is impossible or super difficult, it becomes addicting because you're like, holy crap, we can do anything. Like if we really if we sit down together and put our heads together and act with a tremendous sense of urgency and, knowing that everyone there is super bought into the mission and the culture, no problems seem too difficult. And then when you have that sort of environment, the job becomes addicting. It doesn't matter how many hours you work. You just want to get stuff done. And I don't know if how many people get to experience that at a job. And that was very, very eye-opening and something that I cherish to this day. Now, the downside of that is balance. You don't have balance. My wife is one of the most patient people on planet Earth. She put up with me working at that company. Sometimes, we would barely see each other, and we were running a small business at the same time, which was completely nuts looking back. But it really takes away from that, right? It's an unbalanced work life, especially if you want to take your role very seriously, or if you're part of an organization within that company that is just ramping up and needs all the help it can get. And for Tesla, the best way to think about it, and Elon has talked about this before, is like think of it as multiple startups in one. And that's a very accurate way of describing how the company culture works. I'm very grateful that now I have much more balance. I have a new sort of challenge now that, I'm doing my own thing at all times. I wake up whenever I want. I do whatever I want every single day. And that in itself can be addicting because you're building your own thing and it's working and it's rewarding and it's hard to step away from that, but it's self-imposed, Right. It's 100% self-imposed. Whereas with Tesla, it's you're walking into at the time in 2017, it was in the middle of the Model 3 ramp. and all the resources were focused on getting that thing to work. And so as for an example, the service supply chain organization, we were basically on our own, and doubly so in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, as a standalone facility away from headquarters. We were doubly on our own. And so we really had to be incredibly scrappy. But again, it was super rewarding. So it's nuanced. It's very nuanced. If you're somebody who loves to solve very difficult problems and be given all the power in the world and the keys to run the company and make decisions and work with super smart people, I don't think it's a question of how difficult or how many hours you have to put in. It's more about, you get what you put in. And that's what Tesla's incredible at. I think it's super underrated, is that when people work their asses off, they get rewarded very handsomely. And and that's just the kind of company it is.
Sure.
Well, just to give you a perspective, having been doing this for 40 years now, 4 businesses, working those 80-hour weeks for 40 years, you eventually do find a life balance that works. And I mean, I can be a great husband, I can be a great grandfather, and father to the children, and still put in those 80 hours. And you're right. If once you get to a point where you've integrated work into your personal life, and you're passionate and you love what you do, it's no longer work. I think you guys were saying the other day, Pete, you're 71. When are you going to retire? And I said, I'm already retired and I love what I do, But yeah.
You're 71?
I will be 72 actually in 2 weeks. Yes. And
I don't believe you.
Well, you gotta, it's lifestyle. You gotta exercise every day. You have to, yeah.
Dude, I want to be you when I grow up.
Well, thank you. Man, we got questions coming in. Look at this. TikTok, Brentwood Barbecue says, he's talking about AI again. He says it's going to change everything. He says radiologists will start using AI to dive deeper into x-rays. I think AI could possibly replace our court system at some point. I think there will come a day when you're not going to trust the opinion of your doctor unless he has run something through AI. I mean, think about the breadth of knowledge that's available to AI versus that one individual that may or may not have kept up on their specialty.
I'm waiting for AI to take over refereeing and umpiring in sports.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Oh my God.
There are some areas where it's awfully close where it could happen.
Yeah.
My God. I mean, I've been watching basketball. So I used to play basketball growing up, and I always catch basketball during the playoffs. And basketball needs all the help you can get from officiating because it's so freaking inconsistent.
Yeah.
Football in a sense too, like with the new targeting rule, especially in college, is like half of the hits are like targeting, half of them aren't. I can't wait. That is one thing I think AI will be so transformational in, is like actually making sports 100% fair 100% of the time. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
I agree. Watch Rich Rebuild's channel. George has I think a humorous comment. I was talking about, you remember, I can't afford a Porsche, and George is like, well, just ask Pete for a raise. George, I get paid pretty well. Thank you very much, though. But I think that's not necessarily the challenge there. Another one from George. BattleBots is on tonight. Mark, love it too. Yes, I am looking forward to watching it, hopefully tonight, or if not, within the next few days.
And one of our other audience members, it's on off, and Roger Starkey, welcome back. He says, boy, that Farzad bloke is everywhere. Nice shades, Farzad.
Thank you. That's what happens when you have a computer in your house and you love talking. It's one of those things that people come on the show. Sure. I was supposed to be on last week, and my dummy, I was trying to freaking schedule while I was coming back from vacation, and I accidentally double booked these guys, and we had to move it to this week. So thanks again for being so flexible, y'all. I really appreciate it. I'm having a blast being on.
You're more than welcome. Yeah. A couple more questions. Instagram, Silver Snake says, question, why is the backlight on Tesla Model 3s and Ys so bad, and what do you do to prevent broken backlight? That's going to be a question for you, Farzad. We don't work on them. We work on out-of-warranty stuff.
Okay. Yeah, a backlight, I mean, I'm trying to think back to my time there. I mean, I guess I didn't really see, that wasn't one of the parts per se that really stands out to me that was a huge problem. I mean, really the only parts that we had that we had to ship out a lot of was anything that was sort of recalled, and it was usually around, I think, a couple harnesses and a few other things. And I think there was a latch at some point that we had to get replaced. Yeah, I haven't been at the company for over a year and a half now, but is it due to like some water seepage? Like, does he say what the issue is with the backlight?
He doesn't elaborate, but feel free to chime in, Silver Snake, and yeah, we'll try to answer that question. By the way, speaking of Teslas and screens, I have a workbench over at GMC, and that's what I do on the weekends when I come in and build tools, and I'm having fun basically. But one of my workbenches this morning was just coated with that doggone sticky, slimy plasma that leaks out of these 17-inch screens, and it is a nightmare to get off. My wife's furious at me because she had her leather gloves, this was wintertime, up underneath the console, and this thing started to leak on her leather gloves, and it destroyed them, basically. But anyway, a tip for everyone. He was trying to use Goof Off to get the sticky stuff off, and it was all over my workbench and my tools, and it's going to be quite a cleanup project. Alcohol takes it off. The standard stuff you get in the gallons at Home Depot, straight
isopropyl alcohol,
fuel alcohol they call it. Yeah, and it just it takes it off like nothing else we've tried, from soap to Goof Off to paint thinner, harsh chemicals, turpentine. But alcohol, for those of you that have that leaking problem, and many of the early Teslas, have that problem, especially in this hot area here in Phoenix.
And you're saying it's the fuel alcohol, not like the isopropyl rubbing alcohol?
I didn't try isopropyl, but it seems like the fuel has a stronger odor, so it may be more potent than the isopropyl that you have in your home.
Good point.
Pro tip. Thank you.
Yeah.
YouTube, Trucker Alistair has a comment for us, and welcome, Trucker. Glad to have you. He's one of our regular contributors. He said in the 90s, BMW wasted millions of German money in the United States for trying to develop H2O cars. So these cars,
Mercedes.
And Mercedes. And thank you, Jesse. In the end, they said it was not doable. Money for nothing.
Chicks for free. But he didn't point that out, So then YouTube Lightning Rod also has an opinion about hydrogen. He says, hydrogen is the last gap for the existing infrastructure of fossil fuel industry. I blame Canada for this.
Well, Lightning Rod is from Thunder Bay up near Canada, so he would likely know as well. And then YouTube, watch George from the Watch Rich Rebuilds channel. Farzad, you need to get somebody that has the Watch Farzad Mesbahi channel. You need to get a user that'll do that.
I need to do that.
It's free advertising. Right.
If somebody's watching me that watches me often, come on, change your username. Let's go.
He says AI for USA President of America. What do you think? Oh, that would be interesting. Ooh,
that's a lightning rod, eh?
That would be. That would be.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to just how powerful of a technology AI is, really. I mean, is it really that hard to believe that in 2030, like, truly think back to, I'm 36, so I haven't been around nearly as much as I should be. Let's just say it that way. I haven't really experienced nearly as much as many have. But if I just think back 20 years ago, and I think back, when we first moved to the States and what the things we have now, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. The fact that we can sit in front of our computers and have this conversation, and anyone on planet Earth can watch this, and it's a legitimate form of like, quote unquote, of a profession if somebody wanted to do it. That is completely bananas. It's absolutely insane. Not only 20 years ago, this was reserved only if you had a radio deal or if you had a TV deal. That's it. No one else can do it. Today, anyone can do it. If you're compelling enough, you have a good enough message. If you're saying things that people find valuable, if you're saying things that people find entertaining, so many other use cases, anybody can be an independent business. And I think that's what AI will do over time, is that it's going to empower the individual to become a business more so than ever. And why not the president of the United States? I don't know. I think there's a lot of moral questions tied to that, but I think individuals will become more powerful than ever. And it's going to be very hard to gauge what the world's going to look like in 20 years, because it's only going to get crazier. It's getting crazier faster.
Yeah.
exponentially. You know, in the mid '90s, a big revolution I think that occurred back then was that AT&T or a guy working out of his house could fundamentally look the same with a sophisticated website.
Yeah.
It was very hard to distinguish the difference between those two, and that, I think, began to alter some things.
You know, another thing I think began to alter things is we're seeing now is the work from home revolution as well.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked for the ADP, a large payroll processing company, one of the people who I had as a direct report, was a lady who had worked remotely. Her claim to fame was that she was the first remote employee for ADP, and she had been working remotely from her Chicago house since 1984. And ended up spending an entire career working for a large company from home.
Mm-hmm.
ADP at the time, this is between 10 and 15 years ago now, they had already bought into the idea that they could save on average $7,000 per employee per year by not having a bunch of offices and having to pay office space and stuff like that. That has gotten people used to the idea of being independent and being able to work on their own. And AI is going to exponentially increase that. It's laying the groundwork.
Yeah. One of our early podcast guests, by the way, or presenters, Zane Courtney is with us, YouTube. Hi, Zane. How are you doing? He says, roundtable question, will Tesla pivot to AI exclusively in the next 10 years and rely on the data collected by other auto manufacturers like Ford and Rivian? Also, great shades, Farzad.
Thank you. Like I said, $12 CVS for $10. Actually, I don't even know if it's CVS. My wife bought them for me. Should I take it first? And who wants to take it first?
Yeah, you take it first.
Yeah, go with it.
I think the AI portion of the business will be its most valuable for sure. From an income perspective and the profitability of the company, I can see Tesla getting into a model where hardware is break even and all profits come from AI or AI enabled features in their hardware. And that's what's so fascinating about the story, because Tesla is very much Apple in this sense. So why is Apple such the most valuable company in the world? Is because they figured out how to marry hardware and software in a way that no other company has in that space. You know, they make their own chips. They have a ridiculously well-refined supply chain that makes their products the most efficient per unit of energy. Their battery used, right. Call it. Mm-hmm. Their performance is better than anyone else's, and then they marry that with an ecosystem of software that makes the user experience sort of very unique. And they're layering on a ton of software capabilities on top of that hardware, but it's in our pockets. What Tesla's doing is very analogous to that model, but it's with large scale manufacturing. So where Apple is doing it with, say, small scale manufacturing, Tesla's doing it with large scale manufacturing. They're doing it with transportation. They'll be doing it with energy generation with their solar panels and their batteries, and they'll be doing it with the humanoid robot. Right. So the cars are going to be the self-driving things where they'll try to get people in them either by buying it at break even, like try to make it as affordable as possible. And then you can turn on the software in the car, or they'll facilitate a way for, say, fleets to purchase robo-taxi style or self-driving cars like their Shells or something like that. Like an airline industry down the road is my hypothesis, where Tesla becomes like a Boeing or Airbus. And then, Gruber's fleet running service can buy 100 of them, and then you can outfit the inside of the robotaxi to be whatever you want it to be for your use case. You add it to the Tesla network, and then you offer that use case for, I don't know, 10 cents a mile or 20 cents a mile or $1 a mile, whatever you think the premium should be for that. And I think that's where the AI revenue is going to come in for them, because that network, that ecosystem that's going to be software on top of hardware, is what's going to define Tesla's profitability in the long term. But it's enabled by the hardware. So that's how I think about it long term. How do you guys think about it?
Well, we talk about this often, about how will AI integrate into transportation. And one of the basic premises that we firmly believe in is that there is a shortage and will continue to be a growing shortage of mechanics or technicians, whatever you call them nowadays, to be able to work on electric cars. We experience this firsthand. I can't go to the local dealership down here and poach a mechanic, bring them into our shop, and have them have any level of proficiency because they have no idea how to work in Linux, how to do component level troubleshooting, how to do how to even use the basic fundamental equipment that is required to troubleshoot.
Right.
So, recognizing that the whole world now is adopting EVs and that we have this rapid transition, and that the new EV manufacturers aren't going to be able to build their service delivery system like Tesla had to, there's going to be a severe shortage of this type of talent. How are the cars going to get fixed, in other words? The only sensible answer to me is that we move AI into the cars, we make the cars intelligent, they become self-diagnosing, and in the future, when full self-driving occurs, that car will drive itself down to the service center after having polled the mothership and said, do you have this part? This is what I sense is wrong. A loaner gets dispatched automatically to that person's house, and the cars basically repair themselves. And then you have module swappers, which is a much lower skilled individual that actually fixes the car.
Right. And then behind the scenes, the few people that you would have left over are those high-level engineers, and that those modules that are swapped go to, some brick building downtown somewhere.
The Reman Center in Lathrop.
Yeah, that goes to the Reman Center in Lathrop. Or
Yep.
I totally agree with you. While I don't think Tesla is going to be 100% AI in 10 years, I think what you guys are saying is exactly on point. Tesla is so much more than a car company.
Yeah.
And it's they are following the Apple type of ecosystem and their business plan and business model. Apple's been doing this now for 40 years plus.
Vertical integration.
Yeah. It looks like YouTube. Soren A has joined us, and that's an O with a dash through it, which is very Scandinavian, by the way. He says, hello from Denmark. Welcome, Soren. Appreciate.
Okay, Pete, real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know we're at an hour and 26 minutes. We want to be respectful of Farzad's time. I'm not sure if he has a hard out or not.
Are we getting ready to wrap?
I have a 2 Central and maybe another like 20 minutes or so, so I can eat some food.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. Well, let's wrap up then. We've got a couple more questions here. We have TikTok from Kilowatts. He says, I feel like I should be wearing sunglasses just watching this. Probably. Right?
Probably. You'll never know what the experience is like until you try it.
And then YouTube.
That's right. Give it a shot.
Yeah. George is chiming in again, and he says, Farzad, while working at Tesla, have you ever heard Elon mention my buddy Rich Benoit in a memo, meeting, or just out of his mouth? I only ask because Rich was one of the first guys rebuilding salvage Teslas. And of course, he's talking about Rich Rebuilds. Does Elon, to your knowledge, have you ever spoken with Elon about Rich?
No, never. I mean, Elon and I we don't even have a relationship. It was just through email a few times at Tesla. And then we like to, somehow we've come on Twitter and sometimes we go off of each other's threads, but no, that he's never come up. But I know Rich Rebuilds has a huge platform. He's big time. He was on Joe Rogan, I believe.
He was. He is the P.T. Barnum of the EV world, in my opinion. The few times I've spoken to Elon, it was related to where do we get parts from the Roadster? Where do we get the body panel? Sauter in France, for example. And, there weren't many answers forthcoming because most of the manufacturers are out of business, or the minimum order quantity requirement is astronomically high. So, but somehow we're managing to keep the Roadsters running. It looks like Zane Courtney, again from YouTube, says, thank you, Farzad, for your answer. Big love for the Gruber team, and I miss you guys. We miss you too, Zane.
Likewise. Very much, Zane.
Well, it looks like we should be wrapping here then. We want to thank all of the platforms for joining us. Want to thank Farzad for joining us. It was even more fun than I thought it would be.
Okay, real quick. And Farzad, if you just hang on after the show ends, we'll still be in the Zoom call with you.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So tomorrow we've got our Gruber Power Services second show, and that's for anyone that's in the critical power world, UPS customers, lighting inverters, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Next week, Tuesday, again, EV, Wednesday, Roadster, Roundtable, and Thursday, EV again. Do we have a guest for next week, Thursday? Not yet? Okay, we're working on that.
We're working on Kyle Connor, actually, so hopefully that'll be coming soon.
Kyle will be an interesting guest as well. Farzad, it has been incredibly enjoyable. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching us and participating. That's what makes this show go.
It was an honor. Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast, and I might just do every podcast with sunglasses on now. So thank you for getting me on this trend. I appreciate that.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you. Yes.